You're listening to Witch Wednesdays, your weekly podcast source for all things witchcraft in the modern world. Join your hosts, Steph and Tara, every Wednesday morning as they dive into a new witchy topic.
Welcome back to Witch Wednesdays. This is Steph.
And this is Tara.
And you're listening to episode 3, Witchcraft and Religion. We have already touched on this in the last 2 episodes. We were talking about how Tara follows the Wiccan religion while I don't follow any religion at all. But since the terms witch, witchcraft, Wicca, and pagan are all highly confused, especially by beginners, we thought it was worth an entire episode completely of its own. So when we talk in the future about pagan holidays or Wiccan Wheel of the Year, you'll understand exactly what those terms mean.
Yes.
So I thought the best way to do this was start with the basic summary, and then we'll break it down to make it completely easy to understand.
Hopefully.
So the basic summary is that paganism is the umbrella that covers all non-Abrahamic religions, including Wicca, but paganism is not a religion itself.
Right.
Wicca falls under this paganism umbrella, and it's a dualist religion based on a god and a goddess, and the followers of Wicca are often called witches. Witchcraft itself is not a religion or a faith. It's a practice that requires no deities at all, and therefore not all witches consider themselves Wiccan.
Yeah.
So let's break that down a little bit in case you're still super confused, starting with paganism. So like you said, paganism is not a religion. If someone calls themselves a pagan, it means that they follow one of the hundreds of non-Abrahamic religions. There are only 3 Abrahamic religions, which is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So
Right.
If you are not one of those 3, you are a pagan. It's every other religion, including Buddhism, Hinduism, and Wicca.
And just to be clear, the Christians are the ones that came up with the name paganism. So
Yes.
They basically were trying to separate themselves, the early Christians, and this is one of the few ways they could figure out how to do it. There were the Jewish people, and everybody else in Europe, basically.
That's exactly how that went down. Yeah.
Yes.
So yes, all religions outside of those 3 are considered pagan. So
Yeah.
that said, let's jump into Wicca. And I will do a brief summary and then hand it over to Tara, because Tara is the one that is actually Wiccan, so she can tell you a little bit more. So a lot of people think that Wicca is ancient or pre-Christian, given all these pagan associations, but that's just not true. It's a modern religion started by a man named Gerald Gardner in Britain in the 1940s and officially released as a religion in 1951, making it actually one of the youngest religions in the world, but also one of the fastest growing. So this misconception comes from the fact that it does try to draw on pre-Christian beliefs. And we say try because we don't really know what things were like back then. We just make educated guesses. So Tara can correct me on anything I'm wrong here. Wiccans believe, which you will.
Pretty good so far.
Wiccans believe in a god and goddess. Exactly which 2 these are varies by person, but you can't be a Wiccan without following both the masculine and the feminine, since it's a dualist religion. If you just stick with either a masculine or a feminine deity, you would be pagan rather than Wiccan. And within Wicca, there is something called the Wiccan Rede, R-E-D-E, which is like a statement of the key moral system of Wicca. So if you follow the god and the
Basically
goddess
a
and the Wiccan
motto.
Rede, you can call yourself a Wiccan. Tara, did I say anything incorrect?
You did pretty well.
The podcast you just listened to was made using Anchor. Anchor is free. It's both a website and an app, and it's the easiest way to make a podcast. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
You did awesome, Steph. Just to give you guys a bit more detail, though, on Wicca, that is the overarching belief system is the god and goddess and celebrating the 8 holidays that fall on the Wheel of the Year.
but there are many, many different sects of Wicca, and a sect may have particular traditions and ways that they celebrate the holidays, as well as a focus on particular aspects of the god or goddess when they worship. So there are so many different sects, and one, I'm terrible at pronunciation, so you'll realize that as we go on if you haven't already. And two, I don't want to offend anyone by not remembering a particular sect, so I'm not going to name them all, but they all celebrate the 8 major holidays, but they also may celebrate the lunar cycle, or they may celebrate a particular aspect of the goddess during a particular holiday. And we'll go into all of those in later episodes, so I don't want to get in too depth now. But there are many, many different ways to be Wicca. Wicca is the overarching belief system, but all the different sects are slightly different than one another. One way to think of this is, if you know Christian belief systems, you know that there's Catholics and there's Baptists and there's Methodists, and there's quite a few different sects that celebrate, for instance, Christmas. They all celebrate quite differently or slightly differently depending on what sect you belong to. And none of them are better or worse than another. They're just different. So a lot of Wiccan people do end up falling into a particular tradition or sect. And it's just what they're more comfortable with, what fits their belief system, what works for them. One thing that I really enjoy about Wicca, it is very, very customizable to what you believe, what works for you, and I am all about that. So that is how I fell into the religion, as it were, and how I've been continuing in that religion for so many years as I've changed as a human being over time, because all of us do. And having said that, we will talk more about Wiccan holidays and particulars on that. I just wanted to give you, we wanted to give you a really brief overview on what it is in this and how it is different than witchcraft. They are a lot of times used as synonyms, and I often use them as synonyms because I am both Wiccan and a witch, but that is not necessarily how it always has to be.
So witchcraft and witches. Here's where a lot of confusion comes in, because witchcraft is an integral part of Wicca. Wiccans are also called witches. Now, it is technically possible to be Wiccan and not actively practice spell work, but since there is magic inherently in the rituals and worship, it's hard to say that you're a Wiccan and not also a witch. But you can be a witch without being Wiccan, as we've mentioned before. Tara is a Wiccan witch, and I am just a witch. Witchcraft itself is a completely secular practice that requires no deities at all. You can practice without any belief system, or you can practice with any of the pagan belief systems like Wicca, Buddhism, etc. You can also practice if you are Christian or Jewish, but that's something you need to reconcile for yourself.
The Bible does call out witchcraft as being evil and something that needs to be eradicated, but it says the same thing about gays and mixing fabrics. And so a lot of Christians interpret those older rules for themselves in modern times. Since Tara and I are not Christian, we can't really explain how this works. So if you are, feel free to call in with a voicemail and let us know. And if you listen to the end of the episode, it will explain to you exactly how you can do that.
Actually, my biggest thing with the Bible that you shouldn't take everything exactly as it says is it says shellfish is bad, and I love shellfish. So that really started me on my, I don't think this is right.
Another good reason. Yes. People have a lot of different interpretations about the Bible and the different things. So if you are a Christian witch, please call in and let us know and explain your belief system. We'd love to hear it.
We really would.
And the very last thing that we want to touch on, because it's going to,
before we change over to that. So when we're talking about witchcraft, we're talking about our belief system in how we use witchcraft. It does vary culturally and by country. So if you are in the UK, yes, it is the practice of magical skills and abilities, but it may also have different connotations for you. So I don't want to downplay that the meaning or significance in your life may be different than it is in ours.
Correct. This is all just what we think, I mean, a lot of it is based on generally accepted traditions, and we are going to try to incorporate as many broad things as we can and explain to you how like we incorporate those, you know, in our lives, but it is what we think and believe. So
I just wanted to throw that in there. Yeah. I mean, I think we're smart, but
is actually a good segue into the last thing that we wanted to touch on, because it is going to come up a lot in future podcasts, and it's just comes up in relation to witchcraft in general, is the idea of closed religions. Yeah. So a closed religion is one that you need to be born or invited into. And they are most often indigenous oppressed religions like Native American spirituality, Mayan, Aztec, Voodoo, and the Romani religion, which means we try very hard not to appropriate any of their traditions or answer any questions about it because we clearly don't know the answer. So we just want you to be mindful of this for future podcast episodes. When we discuss animal spirit guides and cleansing your home with Palo Santo, we don't use the terms spirit animal or smudging with sage, because these are defined terms that belong to Native American traditions, not to be appropriated by witchcraft. PSA over.
Well, and
unless Tara has anything to add to my PSA.
The only thing I have to add to that is the big thing about a closed religion versus an open religion, and most people that grew up in a Judeo-Christian type environment, whether or not they were raised in that tradition, even growing up in Iowa as I did, you learn certain terms and you learn certain things like Christmas. Everyone I know celebrates Christmas. I'm talking about the Jewish people. I'm talking about the Muslim people. I'm talking about everyone in the area celebrates it because it's a cultural phenomenon, not just a religious one where I was growing up. Yes, it's also has religious connotations, but a lot of areas that have these kind of pervasive religious traditions that turn into a cultural tradition is they're very open and they go out and recruit. They are very much welcoming to outsiders, but a lot of the traditions that Wicca is based on, or witchcraft kind of incorporates, as it were, it's based on closed religions that the people couldn't join. So they took what they could from it and they kind of made it their own. So as she said, there are certain terms that we're going to try not to use. And in popular culture, they may be used just because that's how they're more commonly known. But
yes, it comes up a lot. You hear spirit animal a lot, like, you know, who's somebody, Jennifer Lawrence is my spirit animal. That's not how it works, and that's not an appropriate thing to say, like, ever. So we use the term animal spirit guides. We will have a whole podcast episode on that. But yes, we are going to be very mindful of that going forward. We want you to be mindful of that. So please, if you have any questions about Native American spirituality or voodoo or anything like that, if you want to ask us, we will direct you to the right people to ask those questions to, because we do know them. We just can't tell you those things because we are not part of any closed religions.
No. And we're really, if you're part of a closed religion, I'm not saying you can't listen to this, but you're going to have way more knowledge on that than we could ever offer you.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything even touching on it, because our entire knowledge base would be TV, which, sorry, it's wrong. I mean, there's no other way of saying that.
Yes. But that wraps up our podcast then for this episode on witchcraft and religion. If you have any questions, please send us an email or a voicemail. Listen to the end and it will explain all the different places that you can reach us. And we will see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Witch Wednesdays with Steph and Tara. Love our content? Consider donating at anchor.fm/witch-wednesdays to help keep our podcast up and running. Please leave us a voicemail on that same site if you have any questions or comments, and follow us on Instagram at Witch Wednesdays Podcast.